Chapter 10 is over relationships and attraction. This is one of my favorite chapters, one that I feel like may cause a lot of introspection for you all as individuals. And I want to preface part of this lecture by saying, whenever we get into types of attachment, that just because you may feel that you fit into one category or another doesn't necessarily mean that you had a bad childhood, that you were not loved, um, that there is a level of normalcy to all of this. And I want you all to not feel poorly about or think poorly about your childhood, young childhood, as we go through some of these things. You'll understand more as I get into it. But I just want to preface saying that just because you may feel certain things about what I'm going to say, that doesn't necessarily mean that um, your parents didn't love you or your caretakers didn't love you, that you weren't, kept well kept after, that you didn't have a good childhood. But that's just where some of these issues stem from typically. So let's get into chapter 10. We'll start off with relationships in general, and then we'll get a little bit more into romantic relationships and attraction. Okay, first, how do we characterize relationships? Through studying relationships, it's very difficult to do. Okay, why do you think that studying relationships and then we're able, based from studying relationships, we're able to then categorize them? Why would you think it's so difficult to study relationships? Well, I think it's difficult to study relationships because it's hard to know what someone is thinking. It's hard enough to study individuals, um, but whenever it comes to an interpersonal relationship, two people, it's really hard to know, to understand, maybe their own little language they've come up with, their body language, their gestures, and how are you going to study them? Are you going to live with them and see how they interact, in their home? Are you going to follow them? Exactly. And that's why it's so difficult, is what are you going to do to study them? Are you going to just sit down and interview them and talk with them, or are you going to do more observational research and see how they are in the day to day? Well, that's not very practical necessarily. So it could be difficult to study relationships and the nuances, um, to each of these, friendships, romantic relationships, family, whatever that is. It's very difficult to navigate the nuances and to understand the nuances of these relationships. Relationships are extremely important to our well-being, our survival. But why is that? Why is it essential for us to feel like we belong? We belong to somebody, we belong with a group of people. Why is that? Relationships help individuals and their offspring to survive, thus increasing the likelihood of passing on genes. So, they say it takes a village. Who comprises your village? It doesn't necessarily have to be just family, or it doesn't even necessarily have to include any family. But who are those individuals that you feel like you belong to, that would drop everything for you to help you out if you ask them to? Long-term romantic bonds facilitate reproduction and to raise offspring who are vulnerable and dependent for many years. So, whenever you have a long-term romantic relationship or bond with someone, and you're committed to one another, and then you produce offspring, it makes it more likely that you will stick together to raise this offspring who is very dependent on you. Parent offspring attachments help ensure that infants and children will survive until they can function independently. Just like I said on the previous bullet, that children are vulnerable and dependent for many years. And so it's very important for parents to feel this bond with their children, with their offspring, to ensure that the parent feels this need and this desire to take care of their children until they can function in the world without them. Friendships evolved as a means for non kin to cooperate, thereby avoiding the perils of competition and aggression. Say there's a resource, maybe there's water or there's a food source, um, rather than two people competing to have that resource. Wouldn't it be better if they shared and then also shared their abilities with each other to then help both people flourish? So instead of competing against one another and being aggressive towards one another, it helps them cooperate. It helps people cooperate with one another, and that goes back as far as prehistoric times, or whatever, goes back to pre-modern times, when now it doesn't really seem like we have to compete for resources as much, but especially back in the day. So they say that friendship evolved from the cooperation between non-kin. So there is some evidence that shows that we need to belong to someone, to a group of people, with a group of people. Mortality rates are higher for divorced, unmarried, and widowed individuals. They're less likely to survive something. They're more likely to die of something, for divorced, unmarried, and widowed individuals. Suicide rates are higher for single and divorced individuals. The odds of survival associated with having strong relationships is comparable to the increased odds of survival associated with stopping smoking and being lean rather than obese. So it's saying that you're increasing your chance of survival just as much by having good, strong social relationships, just as much as the difference it makes in your health to stop smoking or to be at a healthy body weight. That's a huge difference. We know how much smoking or carrying lots of extra weight on our bodies, how much more stress that can put on our bodies. So it's crazy that having strong social relationships is just as important as those things to our well-being. Having support from others contributes to good health by strengthening the cardiovascular, immune, and endocrine systems. Hmm. Why do you think there's a correlation between the two? Why do you think there's a relationship between having support from others and good health? Do you think maybe it's because you have other people looking out for you? Maybe you have people encouraging you, maybe people coming alongside of you and saying, I'll do this with you, because you have other people holding you accountable and helping take care of you than just you on your own. So having support from others is can be a huge difference in the well-being and the satisfaction in someone's life. Okay, so we have a few different ways of relating to other people, different types of relationships. And we're going to kind of break it down into two categories. So first we have communal relationships, and then we have exchange relationships. So our communal relationships, these are the people that is in like our tightest knit circle. This is a relationship in which the individuals feel a special responsibility for one another and give and receive according to the principle of need. So it's not saying that I give 50% and the other person gives 50%. No, it's I'm here for you no matter what you need, even if that means that you need me more than I need you. It does, and I don't care if you ever pay me back or you ever do something for me. It's because I love you, or I feel this responsibility for you, that no matter what, I feel this responsibility to help take care of you, whether that's a best friend, whether that's a family member, whoever that is. So this is most seen with family members and close friends. When it comes to like an acquaintance or maybe a coworker, you're probably not going to feel that strongly of a bond, of a responsibility for those people. So these are the kinds of relationships that are the social fabric of communal life in small villages that you would do anything to protect them. So maybe think of definitely one that is imbalanced is a parent child. The child cannot offer and cannot give nearly as much as the parent gives to them and protects them and gives them resources. A friend could maybe be a little bit closer to 50-50, depending on the type of friendship. But that's not what the focus is on. The focus is on taking care of one another. On the other hand, an exchange relationship is a relationship in which individuals feel little responsibility toward one another. Giving and receiving are governed by the concerns about equity and reciprocity. So that is I give 50, you give 50, and if I feel like uh you're taking 60% or 70%, you're taking more than what I get than what I get from you, well then this relationship is not worth it to me, so I'm cutting it off. This is not an equal exchange. I don't feel a responsibility for your well-being, for your life, so why would I keep contributing to this relationship? So an example could be the relationship between a boss and an employee. A boss is going to compensate you financially, but only for what you do. If you do less, they may not compensate you as much, and they have no problems compensating you less for the amount of work that you do if it is less than what was agreed upon. So how do you think independent versus interdependent cultures handle these types of relationships? And it's funny that we keep coming back to the differences between independent and interdependent cultures, because it it shows how different we we are in social situations based off of what type of culture we come from. And so how do you think independent versus interdependent cultures handle these types of relationships? I think that interdependent cultures may have a bigger circle of who is in their communal relationships. They may have more people that they feel that responsibility towards, but they also have more people that include them in their circle of communal relationship. And that's what I think is maybe the big difference is, because they rely so much on each other and they're so interconnected, well then they each feel responsibility for one another rather than just a close tight-knit group that we in the United States may have. Okay, now on to social exchange theory. Social exchange theory is a theory based on the idea that how people feel about a relationship depends on their assessments of its costs and rewards. And I was kind of describing that when I talked about the exchange relationship on the last slide, is you weigh the pros and cons or the rewards and the costs of a relationship to deem whether this relationship is worth it to you or not. So, for example, your best friend makes you laugh more than anyone else, but you do not believe in a lot of the same things. Is the laughter that your best friend gives you enough to offset the differences in beliefs? If yes, then it is worth it for you to continue the friendship. If not, then it's not worth it for you to continue the friendship. And not saying one is right or one is wrong, but it's saying, have we become too dissimilar to continue this relationship? Is it hurting the friendship? Is it hurting the way we feel about each other? Or does the laughter that we share and the good memories that we have shared, does that offset the negative things that have been occurring in our friendship as well? And that's up for each person to decide. Some things are weighted heavier than other things in your mind. So to you, maybe laughter is, or having fun is at the core of your friendships. Other people, having things in common and being able to at least have your core beliefs the same as your friends, so that you can confide and get advice for things, that might be what's more important to someone else. It just really depends. Okay, and then kind of underneath the social exchange theory, we have the comparison level. This is the expectations people have about what they think they deserve or expect to get out of a relationship. So if you are expecting a relationship to be 50-50 and it's more like 70-30, you giving the 70, then it's not going to be worth it to you. You're probably going to want to end that relationship or leave that relationship, whether that's a friendship or a romantic relationship, a worker boss relationship, whatever that is. But maybe if you go into it thinking, well, I expect to give 70% and I expect them to give 30 because I know that's who I am, or because I know that's all they can give, or whatever it is, then that's the expectation you have. So if they give 30%, then you're like, you know what, I'm okay with it. And if they give 50%, that might be like, whoa, I was not expecting that. Um, this is actually too much for me, or this is great. Whatever that is, it's what is your expectation when coming into some type of relationship? And if it's not being met, then that can change how you feel about the relationship. Okay, so we just talked about comparison levels. Now we have comparison levels for alternatives. Does anyone know anyone? I feel like we all know maybe one person that is kind of a serial monogamist. They kind of jump from relationship to relationship. There's not really ever any overlap per se. They're not cheaters, but they're never fully satisfied in the relationship that they're in. And so they end it and they go on to the next thing. Well, that type of person may have a high comparison level for alternatives. And that is expectations people have about what they can get out of the available alternative relationships. Maybe someone that bounced from best friend to best friend. Oh, she's my best friend. And the next month, oh, she's my best friend. And or that's my boyfriend. Now the next month, no, that's my boyfriend, whatever that is. So an individual who never seems to stay in a relationship for more than a few months might have a high comparison level for alternatives because they're seeing that the grass is always greener on the other side. Maybe that's why dating apps has has kind of put a dent in the ability for people to have good committed relationships, because they're always seeing someone that appears to be better, at least on the outside. And so they start dating someone and things are going great, and then they get to know that person a little bit deeper and they're like, "Ooh, there's some things I don't like. Now I can go on Tinder and I can see this person, their profile looks perfect, they're beautiful, they just get me. Like I'm going to break up with my girlfriend and I'm going to go date this person." And then things are great, and then they get a little bit deeper and they're like, "Oh nope, there's some things I don't like. What about this next person on this dating app that is showing the grass is greener on the other side, that she'll be perfect." And that goes on and on and on. And so it's difficult when the more options you have, the more likely you're going to look for other options. um, and so someone with a low comparison level for alternatives, they're not going to be looking for the next alternative. They're either going to tell themselves, no, even if there are other options out there, I don't want another option, or I can't have another option. Or they just simply don't have other options. Maybe they live in a more rural place where they're not coming into contact with many other people, or maybe they know that their pool from which to choose people who would choose them is really small, and so they are thankful for the people they got. Or maybe they just decided to make a commitment. Whatever that is, um, there are definitely people with high comparison levels for alternatives, and then low comparison level for alternatives, and there's kind of people in the in between as well. Okay, so now on to the equity theory. The equity theory is the idea that people are motivated to pursue fairness or equity in their relationships. A relationship is considered equitable when the benefits are proportionate to the effort both people put into it. And this can kind of coincide with comparison levels. And this is all kind of within the social exchange theory, is whatever people are expecting to get in, put in, they're expecting to get out. Okay, and it's all up to expectations. But in the equity theory, it's about what is fair, what is equitable, what is even, what is equal. Okay, so that's why it's a little bit different than comparison level, because comparison level, you may not expect it to be equal. And if you come in with that idea, with that expectation, you're okay with it. But the equity theory says that we strive for equity or fairness in our relationships, that people put equal amounts of effort into the relationship. And then how the social exchange theory ties in is, if it doesn't, if maybe I'm giving 60% and the other person's giving 40 or 70, 30, or whatever it is, well, that doesn't fit into the equity theory, that I am motivated for an equal partnership relationship. Well, then the costs outweigh the rewards for this relationship, so it's not worth it to me, so I'm going to end it. Okay, so that's how the equity theory fits into the social exchange theory. And so this could be, maybe in a friendship, that if I'm having a bad day, I expect you to, talk to me on the phone and maybe give me some advice, or comfort me, or come over. But I know that you can also expect the same from me. If you can expect it from me, I can expect it from you. And if I can't, well, then this is not the kind of friendship that I'm wanting to have. This is a friendship that I'm going to end, or make more, not as deep. I'm not going to be your best friend, whatever that is. So that is the equity theory. Okay, so that is kind of categorizing relationships and how people seek out relationships. Now we're going to get into attachment styles. This is how we go about forming relationships and keeping relationships. And this is kind of what I prefaced the lecture about. So attachment styles. So first, I'm going to go through the attachment theory. This is the idea that early attachments with parents and other caregivers can shape relationships for a person's whole life. So this is talking about infancy through the earliest of childhood. Okay, that the relationship you have with the people that took care of you the most, your caregivers, your parents, your grandparents, whoever that was, that will affect you for the rest of your life. So early in development, children rely like 100% on their parents or caregivers, whoever, for a sense of security. They require someone else to meet all of their needs. It is basically a 100% effort and 0% effort relationship. Okay, so this allows, so that the security that children get, these infants and children get from their parents, caregivers, whoever, allows them to explore the environment and to learn. Because the first thing that we need in life is to feel safe and to feel taken care of. And if we don't feel taken care of, well, then we can't then explore and learn. Okay, so one has to come before the other. So a child's confidence in the secure base the parents provide stems in part from the parents' availability and responsiveness to the child's ever-shifting emotions. As a baby, they cry because they're hungry. If their need is met, then they know, okay, well, if I'm hungry, I can cry. If I cry, my need will be met. Okay. Maybe a child's diaper needs to be changed. They cry because they're uncomfortable. Well, they know that if they cry, their need is going to be met. But if it's not met, then they're going to maybe search for other options, to get their needs met. And if they don't, then they may just stop altogether. And they're not able to then move on to the next step, which is growing and learning and developing and exploring. So it is important for parents to be available to the needs of their children, because that is how they learn to trust and to be secure, and to be able to rely on someone to take care of them should they need it. So over time, children develop internal working models of themselves and how relationships function based on their parents' availability and responsiveness to them. Internal working models of the self reflect individuals' beliefs about their lovability and competence. They reflect individuals' beliefs about other people's availability, warmth, and ability to provide security. So let's get into attachment styles and see how what I just said, these inner working models and how you believe that someone will be available to you, will be, warmth, so love, affection, kindness towards you, and the ability to provide security, how you feel about your parents' availability or ability to do that as a child can definitely um influence for the rest of your life how you believe that other people can do the same for you in relationships. So there's two main dimensions of attachment. There's the avoidance dimension of attachment and anxiety dimension of attachment. And maybe some of you guys have learned about this before in another psychology class and maybe a personality test, whatever that is. That's fine. But I want you to kind of start with a fresh mind with some of this stuff and learn it anew, so you can learn it the way that it kind of in the terms of how this affects you socially. Okay. So the avoidance dimension of attachment is a facet of attachment that captures the degree to which a person is comfortable with intimacy and dependence in relationship partners. So maybe if you are secure and comfortable with intimacy and and you're comfortable with being able to depend on a partner in your relationship, whether that's a romantic or a friendship or a familial relationship, this could be any of those. Um, if you feel secure in that, then you would not be you would not have avoidant attachment, because you don't avoid intimacy and dependence. Okay. But if you are not comfortable with that, then you would have, you would fit into the avoidance dimension. Okay. Next, on kind of on the other side, is the anxiety dimension of attachment. This is a facet of attachment that captures the degree to which a person is worried about rejection and abandonment by relationship partners. So if you feel so secure in your relationship and you feel like nothing you could do would make them want to leave or not be your friend or your partner or your spouse or your family anymore, and and you just feel so secure in that relationship, well then I wouldn't say you fit within the anxiety dimension. But if you do feel that way, then I would say you probably do. So the three main attachment types, and there's a, a mixture and mix and match of different kinds, but these are the three main ones that I'm going through. So the first is secure. So you could say, I find it relatively easy to get close to others, and I'm comfortable depending on them and having them depend on me. So it is very much a quid pro quo relationship, very equal. I don't often worry about being abandoned or someone else getting too close. I feel really comfortable with other people and making relationships with other people. I trust them. Yeah, that sounds like a very secure attachment style, and I think that you are able to make healthy relationships. Okay. The avoidant attachment type, you may say, I'm somewhat uncomfortable being close. I find it difficult to trust people completely, difficult to allow myself to depend on them. I'm nervous when anyone gets close, and often love partners want me to be more intimate than I am comfortable being, than I feel comfortable being. So how could your relationship with your parents or caregivers' availability and responsiveness to you cause an avoidant attachment type? I want you to think about that. Okay. Next is anxious ambivalent attachment type. And you might say, I find that others are reluctant to get as close as I would like. I often worry that my partner doesn't really love me or won't stay with me. I want to merge completely with another person. And this desire sometimes scares people away. And if you are either have more of the secure attachment type, or I read the opposite of what you are. So maybe you're avoidant. And while I read the anxious ambivalent, you thought, whoa, what a, that sounds intense. That sounds too much. Or if I just, or if when I read the avoidant and you're anxious ambivalent, you might think, whoa, that's intense. That's too much. Know that both are normal. Both, a lot of people um, fit within that category, within those each of these categories. And it might help you understand maybe your friend or your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, um, whoever you may be close to. These attachment styles might help you understand them a little bit better, and know that maybe the way that they act towards you, maybe they're avoiding, maybe they're afraid of you getting too close, that they, they kind of have a hard shell, they're hard to open up. Or maybe they kind of smother you a little bit, and they just like want to be with you all the time, and they're anxious, they're always asking, do you love me, are you really my friend, are you going to leave me? Know that it most likely, not saying it doesn't 100%, but know that it most likely has nothing to do with you, has everything to do with the way that they feel. And it can go as far back as the relationship they had, with the comfortability and security they had with their parents or caregivers growing up. That if they felt like all of their needs were met and they were attended to, and their parents were available and responsive to them, then they may have a more secure attachment type. But if they weren't, well, maybe that can explain for some of this. And I'm not saying that if you fall underneath one of these categories that you were completely neglected as a child. That is not what I'm saying. Um, but there could be something to it. Okay. Okay, so that is all for attachment types. This is something that made me very introspective whenever I first learned about this, and might make you very introspective, might make you ask some questions with your family, or maybe a daycare provider, or whoever that was. It might raise some questions. It might bring up some interesting discussion with your friends, or your boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, whoever. Um, it definitely can open eyes to be like, oh, maybe that's why I act the way I do in my relationships. Okay, so that's attachment types. So this is the end of the relationship aspect of the chapter. Now we're going to get into attraction, which has to do with the relationships, more of the romantic relationships solely. Okay, so attraction. Why are we drawn to some people but not to others? Why, when we pass someone walking by them, some of them catch our eye and some don't? Why do we want to get to know some people and not others? Also, what is the underlying basis of good or bad chemistry? Those are some of the questions that we're going to answer. Okay, so first, why are we drawn to some people and not to others? What can cause attraction? So the first way is proximity. Proximity promotes relationships because it literally brings people together. Do you ever, have a friend, or maybe your spouse, or your partner, whoever, that you didn't like them at first, or were kind of meh, you didn't really feel strongly one way or another about them, and then maybe you worked with them, or you kept running into them at the gym, or you had a class with them, or whatever, and the more you found yourself around them, the more interested you were in them, the more you got to know them, the more open you felt about a relationship with them, the more you started to like them. That happened with my husband and I. When we first met, I did not like him. I thought he was, I didn't think he was ugly, but I didn't find him necessarily attractive. I was not attracted to him. I thought his personality, from what I could tell, was a little weird. Um, but we worked together. He started working with me. And over time, I got to know him and I became comfortable with him. And then I started to notice things that I didn't see before. And then eventually I was like, dang, this guy is cute. And I really like him. And he's got a great personality. And we have a lot of things in common. Um, and then lo and behold, we got married and we've been married for years now. And if we had not been kind of forced in the same proximal area for about a year before we started dating, there's no way that we would have dated. There's no way. If we would have passed each other on the street, in the store, whatever, it would have never happened. So proximity can literally bring people together. And this is by the mere exposure effect. The idea that repeated exposure to a stimulus, such as the presence of someone, such as an object or a person, leads to greater liking of the stimulus. What about a song that you heard for the first time? And you're like, nah, I don't really know if I like it. It's not really catchy to me. Not my fave. But then it becomes really popular and you hear it on the radio a lot. And then you're like, huh, I kind of like this song. You find yourself singing along to it. And then all of a sudden you really like it. Well, that is from the mere exposure effect. That is proximity or a repeated stimulus then becomes kind of a comfort to you, kind of becomes comfortable, and you start liking it. So why does repeated exposure to a stimulus lead to liking? People find it easier to perceive and cognitively process familiar stimuli. The processing of familiar stimuli is more fluent. Because people find the experience of fluency pleasurable. Those positive feelings make the stimuli more appealing. Whenever we're, driving with our windows down or listening to music, we want to more than likely listen to a song that we know the lyrics to so we can sing along, because we are fluent in that song. We know the lyrics, we know how to sing along to it. There's a comfort about that. Same with people. We know them, we feel comfortable with them, we can expect certain things from them because we've seen them over and over. We have repeated exposure to them. So then it becomes kind of comfortable, and then we realize, I like this. Okay. We form a comfortable, pleasant attachment to stimuli after being repeatedly exposed to it. Next is similarity. Similarity is another reason why people become attracted to one another. This is kind of like the saying, birds of a feather flock together. People tend to become romantically involved with people who are similar in terms of their social class. So kind of where in the social hierarchy they lie, education level, and religious background. People from similar backgrounds are more likely to encounter each other via proximity, because if you're in the same social class, you may have, roughly the same type of occupation where you'd run into each other often. You run in kind of the same social circles. So it might be through your job, might be through friends, might be through family, whatever it is. Because you're in the same social hierarchy, you tend to become in the same social or occupational circle. Or through church, same religious background. You may run into each other in those same circles as well. Interracial and interethnic couples tend to be more similar to each other in terms of their personality traits than are couples of the same race and ethnicity, because people may compensate for dissimilarity on one dimension by seeking out greater similarities on others, while being in an interracial or interethnic couple can have its challenges, because you're coming from two very different backgrounds. If there's other core things that you have in common, it makes it easier, because then if not only you come from a different ethnic background, a different racial background, a different educational background, a different you have different personalities, all these things stacked up against you, well then um what kind of relationship is that going to be? Are you guys going to mesh well together? Probably not. You have too many differences stacked against you. Not saying it can't work, but the odds are stacked against you. So the more things you have in common, or more things that are similar, socially, personality wise, background wise, typically the more successful your relationship is going to be, because there's going to be less areas for potential conflict. Okay, now what I just talked about similarity, now I'm going to talk about differences and how differences can attract. And this is through complementarity. This is the tendency for people to seek out others with characteristics that are different from and complement their own. And not compliment as in, I like your hair compliment. That would be compliment with an I. This is complement, like you complete each other. So this is like a complementary angle in geometry, two angles that then create a whole thing. I don't know if it's a whole circle or a whole one, if it creates 180 degrees or 360. I don't know. It's been a long time since I took geometry. So this is like the yin and yang of two divergent personalities. Seems like it ought to create a successful unity. However, it is limited. The complementarity hypothesis makes sense only for those traits for which one person's needs can be met by the other person's differences. You don't necessarily want to be completely opposite in important things which would cause a lot of conflict. Now, if you're different in ways in which you balance each other out, that is a totally different thing. And that's what this is talking about, complementarity. You're making up for the other person's lack, and vice versa. What are some traits that you think would probably work for a complementarian couple, and some traits that you think would probably not work? So I want you to think about this. And I want this to be your journal entry for this week. Your journal on attraction. What are some traits that you think would probably work for a complementarian couple, and some traits that you think would probably not work? Again, APA format, one full page. That is what your journal will be for this week. Okay, next one I feel like is pretty obvious. Physical attractiveness. Yes, we're going to be attracted to people that we find to be good looking. Although certain features are deemed attractive by most people, there's considerable variability in what individuals find attractive. Some people might like taller people, some people might like shorter people, some people might like black hair, brown hair, red hair, blonde hair. Some people might like different kind of eyes. Some people, might think that someone's smile is the most important feature. Some people might think it's their eyes, some people might think it's someone's body. Whatever it is, there's different things that other people find attractive about other people. People like people who are physically attractive, and the reverse is also true. People find those they like more attractive than those they don't like. Just like kind of what I was talking about with, at first meeting my husband, and I thought, nothing wrong with him, but he's just a very average looking dude. But then by the time I realized I liked him, I found him very attractive. Okay. Happy couples tend to perceive each other as physically attractive, even if other people don't see them that way. I know that my friends were not thinking, oh my gosh, he is so hot. He is so cute. You know what? I was fine with that because I thought he was really cute. So because I was happy with him and because I really liked him, I then found him more attractive, even if other people didn't find him to be that way, which was totally fine with me. Individuals who choose to engage in more friendly behaviors, nice eye contact, warm smiles, physical proximity, engaged talk, and affirmative language, strangers and potential romantic partners will find that person more attractive as well, because it comes across as more available, more welcoming. And and that makes you more attractive because people don't want to walk up to and start a conversation with someone that seems standoffish. They want someone that they think they're going to be welcomed kind of with open arms and be able to engage with in a positive manner. And kind of underneath the physical attractiveness is the halo effect. And this is the common belief that attractive individuals possess a host of positive qualities beyond their physical looks. So you may think that, oh, because she's beautiful or because he's hot or handsome or whatever, that they also are good at their jobs, or they're also, nice people, or they're also whatever, XYZ. People may try to date, mate, and affiliate with those who are physically attractive, not only because of their looks, but also because of many other attributes they're thought to have. You see someone that looks put together, they look the part, and they're more likely to get the job or get the gig or get whatever it is. They're more likely to get the girl or get the guy, because of the way they look and the positive attributes we automatically assign to people who are attractive. So what are some attributes our culture thinks is typical for attractive people? Right now you could say big lips, big butt, small waist, muscular legs, toned arms, um, a very distinct, not distinct, yeah, I guess distinct jawline, where you can really see it, a small button nose, nice defined eyebrows, long hair, those are all things, big eyes, those are all things that might be deemed attractive by our culture. But attractiveness is more important in determining women's life outcomes than men's. Beauty, therefore, can translate into power for women, for sure, 100%. So, what are some physical traits that are deemed as attractive in men and women? The idea is that we've evolved to prefer people whose physical features signify health. If we're looking for a mate, and if the goal, evolutionarily is to produce offspring, you're more than likely going to choose someone who gives off the air of reproductive fitness, the capacity to pass on one's genes onto subsequent generations. Someone that looks healthy, someone that takes care of themselves is more likely, just based off of looking at them, to pass on their genetic material with you to then create offspring. So that is what is deemed as the basis of attraction, is how reproductively fit are they. I'm not saying that that's what's in the back of your mind and every time you look at someone attractive is, could I have a child with them? No, but from an evolutionary standpoint, that is what that's saying. Okay, romantic relationships. What is love? How does love change over the course of a long-term relationship? Those of you who are in a long-term relationship may be able to answer this question, just by experience alone, by knowing what it's like the first few months, the first couple years, and on into several years, and how your relationship changes with one another. So first, what is love? Most researchers organize love into three categories: companionate, compassionate, and romantic love. So the first is companionate love. Love we typically experience with family, and friends, people we generally trust, share activities and interests with, and we like to be around them. They are our companions, the people that kind of look after us for life, the people that we enjoy their company. The next is compassionate love. This is like a communal relationship with bonds that focus on monitoring and responding to another person's needs, such as how a mother looks out for her child or how a spouse might put his partner's needs above his own. That you're doing something kind of sacrificially, and that is the kind of love that compassionate love is. And then lastly is romantic love, and this is the love associated with intense emotions and sexual desire, also known as passionate love. You might say, "I'm in love," and that's what type of love you are describing is passionate, or sorry, romantic love. So, Underneath romantic love, that is what I'm specifically talking about. So this is kind of how relationships change over time. You go from the early stage of relationship to then on to the later stages, years on. So at the early stage of relationship, you've kind of declared your feelings for each other, for one another. You've decided that you are going to be together. Maybe you just decided to be exclusive, but your feelings have been made known for one another, and now you're together. You have these powerful, all consuming feelings. You can't stop thinking about them. You want to talk to them all the time. You want to be with them all the time. You have trouble focusing. You can't stop talking to your friends about them. You want to be with them 24/7. It's just all consuming. Like, you just can't get enough of it. You have butterflies in your stomach. Your face gets, hot and flushed. You just feel like you can't be without them. Sexual arousal, maybe you want to kiss all the time, maybe you want to have sex all the time, maybe it's new and it's exciting and it's all consuming. And then you feel knocked off your feet, crazy in love. You're almost in a daze where it's just the two of you and you can't think about anything else. That is the early stage of a relationship where everything is new and exciting and just all over the place. But then you get to the later stage, and this is maybe where some people struggle with going from relationship to relationship, because if they keep going from relationship to relationship every few months, well, then they're never getting past that early all powerful stage, because once they start to hit that later stage, they feel like maybe the spark has died, or maybe they don't love you anymore, or whatever that is, it's not fun anymore. And that's where I would disagree. So the early passion may ebb, but then you form this deep sense of emotional, or, a combination of emotional, mental, physical intimacy where you are comfortable with one another. You can talk to each other about, you really get to know the person. You can share your fears and your life, and the things your hopes and dreams. And so that forms this deep sense of intimacy, which then leads to an increased comfort and security. So romantic partners include their partner's perspectives, experiences, and characteristics more into their own self-concept, that they don't just think about themselves anymore and what makes them feel good. They are taking you into account whenever they're thinking about their future and their hopes and their goals, and what they're doing in the day-to-day. And so, yeah, you may not have the fiery, powerful, all-consuming feelings all the time, but that's good. Who could live with those kind of feelings for, hopefully the 50 plus years, if you get married, or you're with someone, if you choose to stay with someone. You wouldn't be able to get anything done. You would be crazy all the time. And so it's good that ebbs and flow, that passion ebbs, that it kind of diminishes, to then bring on something even better, and something that's more stable. And so that's where maybe some people struggle with going from the early stage to the later stage, because it does feel different, but it's not a bad different. Okay, I'm your guys' relationship guru for this chapter. Okay, what causes commitment, or a lack thereof? So based off of the investment model of commitment, this is a model of interpersonal relationships maintaining that three determinants make partners more committed to each other. This is relationship satisfaction, few alternative partners, and investments in the relationship. So if you're satisfied or not. This is the partner's evaluation of the rewards and costs associated with the relationship. So that's based off of the social exchange theory. If they feel like they are putting 80% of the effort into the relationship to make it work, and their partner is only putting in 20%, well, then they are not going to be satisfied with their relationship. They're going to say, this is not fair. I'm not receiving anything, and I'm giving everything. I'm going to be depleted if I don't end this relationship. Okay, so satisfaction. Next is alternative partners. We talked about the comparison level for alternatives. It's kind of where this plays into commitment. The fewer options a romantic partner has outside the relationship, the more committed that person tends to feel, and the more likely that person is to remain in the relationship. So if you keep your options open once you're in a relationship, you're pretty much dooming it to fail. Because when you give yourself even the opportunity to look at other options, some of those other options are going to be looking pretty good. So it's best to, if you want to be committed, to just stop and say, okay, I'm committed. There's no other options. Okay. And then lastly is investment. How much have you invested into this relationship, whether that's time, money, other resources? So people are more likely to remain in a relationship if they have invested heavily in it. So researchers find that findings suggest that one person's investment in a relationship not only increases that person's own commitment to the relationship, but also increases the partner's investment in the relationship. Whether that investment is, putting your finances together, whether that's buying a house together, having a dog, having children together, maybe running a business together. Whether it's time, I've spent 25 years with this person. Even if we're in a rocky spot, I'm not giving up. I've invested too much into this. I've invested my life. And so I'm not going to give up just because, things haven't been going so well lately. But knowing the investment that you've put in also increases your partner's likelihood to be committed. Commitment is linked to longer lasting relationships because it encourages behaviors that are good for the relationship, such as sacrifice and forgiveness. If you are committed that no matter what, I'm going to make this relationship work, well, then you're more likely to do things that encourage commitment in your relationship. If you don't make any sacrifices for your partner, well, then that's going to show, and they might become dissatisfied because they are doing all the sacrificing. What it could be something as small as what do you want to watch on TV? If you're always choosing and you never, oh, okay, I don't really want to watch this, but I'll watch this for you, or where to go out to eat, or it could be small things that build up. It could be big things, whatever that is. Forgiveness. If you don't forgive and you keep holding things over their head, well, that's not going to be a very healthy relationship. That's not going to make someone want to stay. So the more committed you are, the more likely you are to engage in behaviors that benefit that commitment. Okay, so relationship dissatisfaction. What makes someone dissatisfied in a relationship? We just talked about costs and rewards, but let's delve a little bit deeper into it. Nearly 50% of first-time marriages end in divorce. What predicts relationship dissatisfaction? Because these people must be dissatisfied in their relationship and somehow to not want to continue. So first off, personality matters. Neuroticism, low self-esteem, and high sensitivity to rejection create greater difficulties in intimate relationships. It makes it difficult to be selfless and to think of your partner before yourself. With neuroticism, low self-esteem, and high sensitivity, you are more thinking inward rather than as a we rather than a me. Socioeconomic backgrounds. Individuals with lower socioeconomic backgrounds are more likely to divorce. Educational background, income, occupational prestige, and lower socioeconomic status is apt to introduce into the relationship financial difficulties and the burdens of finding gratifying and stable work, some of the primary reasons that marriages break up. So if you are finding it hard to be fulfilled in other parts of your life, such as a good job that you feel stable and pays well enough, at least to live, well, that's going to trickle in to your relationship, and it's going to cause some instability and some stressors there. Okay, it keeps skipping my last one, so I'm gonna my last couple ones. So lastly, harmful behaviors. And this, you can find this in almost any kind of relationship book or therapy or whatever. The Four Horsemen of the apocalypse of a relationship. I should add on to that. Harmful behaviors when it comes to the success of a relationship. The first is criticism. So they get worse as they go on. The first is criticism. So are you constantly finding fault within your partner? If so, be careful and maybe turn back. Maybe stop doing that, because that can doom a relationship. Okay. Next, kind of on up a tier, is defensiveness. Refusing to consider the possibility that something they are doing might contribute to the conflict. So it's never your fault. It's always your partner's fault. Doing that can doom a relationship. Next, kind of up a tier, is stonewalling. This is refusing to communicate or cooperate. How can anything get better if you refuse to communicate and cooperate with your partner? It can't. And then lastly is contempt. And once you feel contempt towards your partner, it's not good. Okay. Not saying you can't come back from it, but this one's a toughie. This is a feeling of scorn toward your partner, or an act of showing disrespect for your partner. So, based off of what I just said, I've got a question. Do married people get divorced because they express contempt and other negative emotions? Or do they express these emotions because their relationship is already on rocky ground? Just something for you to kind of mull over as you think of the four horsemen of the apocalypse of relationships, the four things that are most likely to doom a relationship. Okay, that is the end of chapter 10. I will post the journal for the week, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. All right, bye bye.